Are you a hopeful adoptive family wanting to know how to match in less than a year? Well, today we're going to have a conversation with one of my clients, Jill and Brady, and learn exactly how they did that. Jill and Brady and I worked together through the Adoption Profile Masterclass, where I taught them how to build their adoption profile themselves. In today's episode, they're going to walk us through their journey from everything from starting with the home study all the way through to matching and expecting the birth of their child next month. If we haven't met yet, my name is Amanda, and I help hopeful adoptive families match faster by teaching them how to adopt and how to create and share their adoption profiles. If you haven't taken a moment yet to subscribe to this channel, all you have to do is click the little subscribe button, ring the bell, and you'll get notified each and every time I release a new episode. Now, let's dive into our conversation with Jill and Brady. Today, we are incredibly fortunate to have Jill and Brady sharing their adoption story with us. Jill and Brady, thank you so much for joining us and welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you. We're excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you very much. We're excited to share our story.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you for sharing. And really, I know it's helpful for other hopeful adoptive families to hear from others, right? We all learn together in a village. I'm a firm believer of that. And so if you wouldn't mind just to share a little bit kind of where you are in your journey at the moment, and then we'll kind of rewind and talk about how we got to where we are today.
All right. So we are matched with an expectant mother. We have been matched since about May, end of May, beginning of June.
Yep, very end of May.
Yeah. And so we have been able to be in contact and prepare for a while. I know that everybody's story is different, so we feel fortunate that we've been able to prepare. And she is due in November.
I'm super exciting. So tell me a little bit more about kind of your path to match. How did you kind of get started? And ultimately, how did you end up matching your adoption?
Yeah, so we started the home study process. We had been talking about it probably for a while in our marriage, but we officially started the process back in August of 2021. So like over a year.
Yeah, ago. Just a little over a year.
And we both work in education. So fall is kind of our busy time. And so we were a little bit slow on getting all of our documents and stuff in order and finishing some of our classes. So we finished up that home study in December of 2021 and got on with a couple of agencies and an advertising agency in January. I mean, pretty close after that. And, we were kind of waiting, and we were shown some families and some situations. And then in May, it was an attorney actually reached out to us, to that advertising agency, and said that the expectant parent had chosen us and wanted to do an interview. And that's how we matched.
Wow. First of all, kudos to you for battling through back to school season and getting through all of your home study. Yeah. As just a parent who interacts with the school system, I know what it's like and how hectic it is. But my goodness, I can't imagine going through all of that paperwork at the same time. Mm-hmm. But getting through there and then really kind of choosing your agency in January and working on your profile and then having an opportunity in May. That's an incredibly fast period of time.
I would say that's what surprised us the most is, by the time we entered the system of essentially in January, we've been told, expect up to 12 months. And
or the fact that up to 2 years.
Yeah. And the fact that, 5 months later, here we are preparing for a baby was just mind spinning.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is, I mean, it's just amazing. So I'd love to know a little bit more about kind of those steps in that process. So where you live, they require classes as part of your home study. And so you got your home study approval. Talk to me next, kind of your decision, if you will, as it relates to what agency partners you were going to use to help you really kind of spread the word and about your family.
So really, the agency partners that we chose to use were mostly through word of mouth referrals. We had some colleagues and friends that had adopted in the past, and what agencies and professionals that they felt like were really helpful, both a lawyer and then an agency. And then this advertising agency, which we thought was kind of you paid after you matched with this particular agency. And so we were like, oh, I don't know that much will come out of this, but we'll try it. And that ended up being really helpful for us with finding that match.
I'd say that we definitely expected something to come out of the local recommendations we'd received. We started off just with those, and then we had a conversation of, we found this national listing type agency where we were like, it's nationwide, and we didn't have to pay anything up front. So we decided to take a flyer on it, put our name out there. And I'd say we're definitely surprised that that's where the match ended up coming from, really, just because it's something we decided to take a flyer on, and it ended up working. So
yeah, that is awesome. You just never really know, right? That's what I share with clients all the time. Like, it doesn't tell everybody, right all the time. You just don't know.
We have family scattered kind of throughout the United States in a few places. So we wanted to look at kind of going nationwide, just because we had a support system in place to where if we had to travel, there would be opportunities that we would have support. We wouldn't be on our own somewhere.
That is really important. And that's very strategic on your part, because once you get into a state, you never know how long ICPC is going to take to clear so that you can go back home. And it can get really expensive. I know with our oldest, we ended up having to be in the state of Florida for 3 weeks, which I know, when you don't live in Florida, it sounds like really fun to go and stay in Florida.
But every night just starts adding up. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, when you've got to eat out and, laundry and the whole bit, right? It's for sure. So you chose your agencies, and I agree with your approach on kind of a multiple agency or a multiple kind of matching, right, opportunity method. I do think that also has a lot to play in kind of the speed of how a lot of hopeful adoptive families are matching these days, is because they're really what I call putting yourself in the driver's seat of your adoption, right? And seeing that you have an equal responsibility to share your desire and intent to adopt, and to share your profile with more people, so that way people can actually learn that you're hoping to adopt and potentially consider a match with you.
Right. And what was kind of eye-opening for me when we were doing all of this is we had a whole list of things to do from the home study agency, and okay, take this class, make sure you're doing this class and this form and getting this, TB test or something done. And so, honestly, making a profile was pretty far down on my list, because we got to make sure we're enrolled in this class and doing this and all of that. So it was kind of on, okay, I'll have a book, it's fine. I collected a few pictures. And the lady doing our home study said something like, okay, you guys have been working on your book, and I'm pretty planner, meticulous person. I'm like, oh gosh, no, I haven't been working on the book at all. What are you talking about? And she had recommended to take the course with you. She said, people just find this really helpful. And I thought, okay, well, I'm taking all these other classes. Might as well take this one too. And it was just so eye-opening for me. I guess I kind of felt like maybe we had some things to say, but I we're kind of boring. Like we don't, we just kind of hang out. We're a little bit introverted. And going through the course, I thought, we're kind of, what do we do in our free time? Like, of course we do things, but like, what do we do in our free time? And all of those things that you want to bring out. And I really probably would not have known how to do that. I probably would have written that very much like a resume. And I feel so fortunate. And I know that you said that like you felt like, I think casting our net really wide was helpful, but I also think having a good profile was, in the end, like that's what really helped us match.
Oh, absolutely. Because like you said, the things we do, we do things in our free time and we do certain things, but to us, they become so routine, like going to a concert or whatever we like to do. It's just part of the natural flow of our lives. It's hard to sit down and think about that of like, okay, this is what we do, but how do we talk about it? Because to us, it's just happens.
Yeah. And like, what is our story? And
right.
How do we share that story? And both Brady and I, we actually met in graduate school in educational psychology program. And so I think we were really trained in technical writing, very like scholarly scientific writing. And so narrative writing was pretty different for us. And so that was really helpful too.
Good. Well, I'm glad you found that helpful. That's the Adoption Profile Masterclass. And it really, I created it. So again, my background is in journalism, bachelor's and master's, and then I work in marketing as a day job. But as I went through the adoption process, I realized that I needed to narratively write the story about our life, right? And I needed to share it in a different way. And the problems and the pitfalls that I encountered when I very first wrote my profile is I treated it just like a resume, just like you said.
Yeah,
I put everything in there, right? Like, and it was just, it was too overwhelming.
And yeah, I think that is the most probably the most training you've had when you talk about yourself. Okay, here are my degrees and here are my here's my what I do for a job. And it was kind of funny when I got to when we were putting up, we were both writing, like he'd write and then I'd write and then we put some together. And by the end of it, I said, I don't think I even put what we do for work in here at the end of it. Like we had to go back and like write just a little bit of that resume stuff because like we were just so much into like telling the story, and it was really helpful.
Yeah. The very beginning process when we were doing like trying to think back, like the brainstorming bubble style worksheets.
Yeah.
The only thing that really came up as far as, like you said, the resume type stuff was, one of our facets of life was education, and that's where we work. But like the focus of it wasn't, this is what we're getting up and doing every day. We just being able to brainstorm and think kind of critically about the different points of our lives was that like homework, for lack of a better term, really made us think outside and think more deeply about how we categorize our life and then how we explain that. So
that is awesome.
And then ultimately how we want to bring a child into that too.
That's right.
And so I think the class definitely helped like with getting that narrative out, but it also helped us kind of think a little bit differently. Like, okay, education is really important to us. It's, it's how we met. It's what we both work in, all of that. But like, what do we want that to look like for our future family, and getting that out and thinking through those things. We definitely thought about it. Like, obviously, they're going to go to this school because it's right here or whatever. But, it helped even put that story into our minds that maybe hadn't solidified all the way.
Yeah, the super one, it warms my heart to know that it helped you. And that always is, again, my goal. That's the reason why I still have a corporate day job, right? And do this because it's my passion. But it too, I hope it helps you also prepare for your conversations with your expectant family. Can you talk to me a little bit more about what that was like when you got that phone call and you were going to have that very first conversation with them?
Yeah. So we, like I said, a lawyer had reached out to us through, like, we'd found you guys on the site, and, the expectant mother had, she was pretty set on it being us. Cause in the other like matches that we've had, there's been like 2 or 3 couples. And, so we kind of were like, okay, so, here's us. And she was like, okay, no, guys, I've decided on you guys. And
her lawyer encouraged her to pick like backup families. He's like, okay, pick 2 or 3. And she comes back with us. And he's like, okay, who else? And she's like, there's nobody else. And so to hear that on that phone call was just completely, mind blowing and exciting, and just, just knowing we did something right, I guess.
And so I asked her, like, you're really committed. That's great. I love it. But like, what makes you so sure? And she's like, I just reading that profile, like, I felt like the child was already in your hearts. And it really, the child is already in our hearts. We both want to be parents, and we've wanted to be parents for so long. And that the child, we're both very loving people. And so the child, whoever that is going to be, definitely was already in our hearts, and was already, when we moved into this house, probably 5-6 years ago. We had a room that we never touched, because that was going to be a future child's room. And so like that, the child was definitely already in our hearts. And I'm glad that was able to be communicated.
That's amazing. That is awesome. I oftentimes have to, kind of fight away the tears in those moments. So you had the opportunity to have that first conversation. What has it been like since then? So you said you were picked kind of at the end of May.
Yeah.
And it's now October when we're filming this episode, and she's due in November. So what's the journey have been like since then?
So there's some distance. So we live in the Midwest, just specifically us, we live in Kansas, and we're adopting in Texas. Okay. So there is some distance there. We have been able to travel once and attend a sonogram with her.
Oh, wow.
And we were able to be there to find out that it's a girl. So, we were able to be there for that piece. And Jill has just done such a wonderful job of creating a relationship with our expectant mother. I give all the credit to her. She's done an amazing job in this, and probably talks to her at least once a week, every time she has a doctor's appointment, asking how everything went. And just also not just from a selfish standpoint of how's this baby, but Jill, again, amazing job of creating the relationship and caring for the mother as well, making sure if she needs something from us, or if there's anything we can do to aid her the way she's aided us, just creating an amazing relationship. So to me, it's been smooth and zero issues, and everything's gone great. And I owe it all to my amazing wife. So,
well, and I think that was very kind of to say. I think also, we've been really lucky in having an expectant parent that wants that. Again, this is our first situation. So I understand that in some situations it's all talked through an adoption agency. And that's, this one, since she and the lawyer kind of came to us, I've had the direct contact with her. We did end up actually, just something that I didn't realize, that different states have different laws on, how you can help families and things like that. So we did end up having to go to a different agency that worked in Texas. So we do still have the agency involved because that was needed for our situation. But having that direct contact with her, but she's been amazing too. Like I'm just kind of a worrier, but like I'm worried about a person like in general. And so like when she got sick, what do you need? What can we do for you? And I even told her later, I'm sorry if I was like over texting, but I wanted you to be okay. And like that you were sick and that I didn't even ask about the baby. I just wanted to make sure she was okay. And she was like, oh no, I loved that you cared and all of that. So she's been really amazing too. And I just feel like we've just been so fortunate to find each other. Like both of us, we kind of talk about like, we just feel so fortunate to both find each other. We couldn't be happier with the person that we've matched with.
That is amazing. And you're right. Every situation is different. And, and it is perfectly normal to be a worrier, especially through the adoption process. I find a lot of my clients are like, hey, can we talk about things other than a profile? And I'm like, yes, yes.
Right.
Yes. Because I've been there. I've lived it. I've lived it all. And then I've lived it with others. And so I often say like, I don't know this situation because I don't think there's a perfect right answer, but here's what I've learned. So take this and then take, and go from there. But I think the biggest thing that I've learned is to do exactly what you are doing and modeling for others, which is to care about her as a person first.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. She's not the vessel for the baby. She is a person that you want to have a whole and complete relationship with and in the most healthy fashion that you can. And how that happens is by putting her first and creating that relationship with her first. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I would totally agree that I think in general, women, when they're all women, when they are pregnant, are get started to see as that vessel. And, there's been the conversations where I'm like, I want you to really think about your privacy during this moment. Like, I don't have to, just being like the hospital plan and things like that. I'm like, I want you to think about your privacy as a whole person, because that's really important. And I understand that like, we're having this relationship and we're pretty open with each other. I was in the room during the sonogram and things like that. But like, remembering and keeping that personhood and that person's independence and privacy is just something that I really value. And I think a lot of people do value, but sometimes it's just hard to think about all those things that you have to balance sometimes because it's a lot to balance.
Yeah. There's a lot of emotion wrapped in there too. Right. And that's what makes it, even more tricky. And I often joke with some of my hopeful adoptive families. I'm like, we really need to go through an emotional intelligence class as we enter into this, because a lot of that would help us as hopeful adoptive families to put perspective around things of like, okay, well, think about the situation that they're in before you start to respond. Right. And then think about the baggage that you're carrying into the conversation and try to leave it out as much as possible. And I think you're right. If you focus on them as a person and really respecting their personhood from that perspective, no matter the expectant parent or expectant mother or father, I think it is just a really unique and different way to think about that. And it honestly helps calm you as you go through the process as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. My day job is actually a psychologist. So, a school psychologist. So I ask Brady if I'm being too psychologist sometimes, but I think that you're absolutely right. Like thinking through all of those different emotions and processing your own emotions, because there are definitely some times where I have to sit back and be like, okay, Jill, this is your anxiety getting in the way right now. And don't be silly. Don't be don't be jumping to conclusions. Don't be, people are living their whole lives around you. And I think you have to like learn to kind of talk to yourself like that, but also, it's okay to have those emotions. It's okay to acknowledge those. And you really do need to give yourself time to think through those things and, allow yourself to, be who you are as well. Not like put that onto your emotions onto other people, but allow yourself to also get what you're needing. I remember one day over the summer, it was early summer, and I was just telling my mom that I'm filled with so much anxiety right now. We've just, all of these changes, it's really been stressful for me. And Brady was going to go to some conference or something. He was going to be gone
Washington, D.C.
like 2 or 3 days. And I was off for the summer. And I just told my mom, hey, can I just come spend the week with you? Because like I'm gonna just be sitting at home stewing and just worried about like, and it's not even like things that necessarily about this process, just in general, like things had kind of piled up. And so I think doing that for myself and allowing myself to like give myself that break and just know, okay, you don't need to sit there fighting with your anxiety the whole time. Like go do something else. I think that is something that I think people need to definitely allow themselves to do. I think people often try and hold themselves to the really high expectations, and allowing yourself those breaks and those check-ins with yourself.
Yeah, that's really great advice. I know when we were in the waiting period, for me, I planned vacations on money we didn't have, mind you, because we were adopting.
Right.
I had all the Pinterest boards with all the trips, right? Because that just helped calm me. And then my poor husband, I must have cleaned our house 5,000 times and purged and purged and purged.
So I'm so sorry. He's scratching at me. Edit. Sorry.
No problem. But yeah, I remember going through that portion of like the waiting period, and it was just, what can I do? Right. And anything to calm myself down was really helpful. So now you're in kind of the last couple of months or the last few weeks. So talk to me about the hospital plan and kind of where you are at the moment and what you're planning and looking forward to as kind of this journey progresses.
We just got the hospital plan 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So, we're really just preparing for that. Preparing, like I said, we have to travel from Kansas to Texas. So just preparing for that travel, gosh, even before we got the hospital plan, we're in the nursery going through everything that is stacked up in there, being like, okay, this goes to Texas, this stays here, this goes to Texas. And just, even 2 weekends ago, we're practicing packing the car. So we make sure we take everything. And
does it all fit in the car?
We make sure we have enough place, like
trade cars with his parents.
Yeah. Do I have to borrow a bigger vehicle from my folks? And can I see out the back windshield? And, we, again, having 3 dogs, having a plan in place for them, right now the idea is we're being told that there will be a planned date for a C-section.
Okay.
So that's helping us plan and nail down our dates. Hopefully avoid that 3 a.m. phone call that's like, hey, head to Texas. And then,
but it could happen too.
And then I'm making a phone call to my brother where I'm like, hey, come pick up my dogs, take them to our parents' house, because my parents are going to stay back and watch the dogs. And just, I'm such a planner too, not to the extent Jill is. Like when we went on our honeymoon 6 years ago, Jill had a 3-ring binder with tickets and everything we were doing for each day. We went to Nashville and Lynchburg and Memphis and places like that. And, she had planned out all the places we wanted to see, our admission tickets and everything. And I work with veterans every day. So I'm very schedule oriented because they are too. Because they're used to, I got to be here at 0800, things like that. And so that's kind of rubbed off on me working in the field. And so that's where I get anxious, is planning and making sure well, for lack of a better term, hitting our marks. I want to be here at this time and do this at this time. And so I'm always trying to make sure we're hitting those marks. So making the hospital plan.
But we also know that can all be thrown out the window.
Exactly.
And, we just keep telling ourselves, like, if it's all thrown out the window, we're going to be ecstatic.
Oh, yeah.
Like, we're just going to be ecstatic with whatever life brings us in the next 2 months.
Absolutely.
Because we're just, and we know that mom, expectant parent can still, make a different decision. And that's something that we would support her in that too, because of course that's her right. And we're just, even as much as we do like to plan, we understand that those plans can go out the window. That's not something that we can control, but that we'll be ready for it no matter, what happens. We'll be ready to jump in the truck and get going. And we're looking forward to what life brings.
That is amazing. Yeah. Well, I thank you for sharing your story. I'd love just to give you the opportunity, if you could say one thing to other hopeful adoptive families that are out there just waiting in their process to match, any words of advice or encouragement that you would give to them.
Let me collect my thoughts, and I definitely will.
If you want, I'll go first.
Yeah, go for it.
Like I said, I try so hard to be a positive person, and I would tell anyone who's waiting, it's coming. It is. And no matter how much you feel in this moment like it's not, it is. Yeah. And that's what you keep your heart turned to, because it will, and it might happen in the time you least expect it, but it will happen, and it will be the greatest thing.
Absolutely. Another kind of echoing off of that is keeping your heart open to all the people that you get to cross paths with in this journey. You definitely get to meet some great families out there, but you also get to meet great families that have an adoption story to tell as well. There's so many people at work who, I didn't realize that they built their family through adoption, that kind of came out that way, and getting to meet different professionals. And I feel like having your heart and your circle grow, and getting to grow that along the journey, just enjoy that as well.
That is awesome. Well, thank you both so much for being willing to share with our audience. And we'll definitely want to do an update once baby is home.
Absolutely.
Love to do that.
Love to. Yeah.
And learn more about that. So again, thank you so much for your time and everything you've shared with us today.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
I hope you found a lot of value in the conversation with Jill and Brady today. There were a few important lessons that we touched on throughout our conversation. The very first thing is they really took charge of their adoption and made sure that they had a really high quality adoption profile. They knew that they didn't feel quite confident in telling the story and knowing really what to say about their family, and they needed a little bit of help and guidance along the way to do that. So they worked together with me through the Adoption Profile Masterclass to create their adoption profile that they felt really comfortable with and that they knew was really going to help them match their adoption. The second big lesson that they taught us today is that they shared their profile through multiple methods of matching. They were sharing it in real life with friends and family, and they were also working with multiple agencies. They did their homework and they found agencies that wouldn't require them to pay anything until they matched, or that would give them a small opportunity to share, with an advertising fee attached to it, and that would also share it on their behalf with other people. And lo and behold, that's actually what helped them match. They were sharing their profile in multiple different ways so that more people could see their profile and have the opportunity to consider them as the right hopeful adoptive family. And really, that is the secret to why they matched in less than a year. Them matching, so again, they went live in January and they matched in the end of May. They'll bring home their child in November. So them matching in that short of period of time is because they were doing their homework and creating a great profile and then sharing that profile with expectant families and then having the right conversations and the right mindset once they had that opportunity to connect with an expectant family. Treating the expectant parents and mother as whole people and not just as an opportunity to adopt a child, I know helped them form the right relationship, which has helped them have a really great foundation for the rest of their lives as an extended part of their family. So again, I hope that you found a lot of value in the conversation today. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop them below if you're watching on YouTube. And if you're listening to this on the podcast, jump on over to the My Adoption Coach Facebook group and ask there. Remember, anything's possible with the right plan and support. And I'm always just a message away. I'll talk to you soon.